Josh, are you ready? I'd like to welcome everybody to the December 7th, 2020 Commissioners meeting. If you'd stand for Pledge of Allegiance and a word of prayer, please. And Don Adams will be doing the prayer for us this morning. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to share a prayer that I came across yesterday, actually, and then I'll follow that with a prayer for us. This is from a lady named Linda Truman. She says, God, keep my anger from being meanness, keep my sorrow from collapsing into self-pity, keep my heart soft enough to keep breaking, keep my anger tuned towards justice, not cruelty. Remind me that in all of this, every bit of it is for love. Keep me fiercely kind. Well, God, we will thank you for the beauty of the season and your ever support for the darkness that is coming and your ever support for the joy that our children are experiencing. We ask you to watch over those who are guarding us and taking care of us during this time. We ask for wisdom and guidance as we work to the business of governing this county. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Don. First order of business is going to be material bid opening. That's going to be on gasoline, diesel fuel, different type of pavement and stones, culverts. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Dan.
So the first bid is from Co-Alliance for Class 1 gasoline. Delivered price is 93 octane is $1.66 per gallon plus taxes. And for Class 2 diesel fuel, price is $1.36 plus taxes. Was the only bidder for fuel. Okay. So the next bid we're going to is for Class 3 hot bituminous materials. And these prices appear to be applicable to all three commissioners' districts. And these prices are for FOB on county trucks at their plant location from Milestone Contractors LP. And the bid for the base material is $48.25 per ton. Binder is $49.75 per ton. And for surface mix, it's $59.75 per ton. They did not submit any bids for materials delivered at the different districts, 1, 2, and 3 locations. Next bidder is E&B Paving, LLC. These bids also for prices at the bidder's plant. And the base materials, $50 an even per ton. Binder is $53 even per ton. And surface mix is $55 per ton. They also have a cold mix bid of $100 per ton. This bid is from Asphalt Materials. This is for the liquid asphalt. Price for pickup at plant for the RS2 AE90 is $456 per ton. The AE90S is $528 per ton. The delivery to job site price is for the RS2 AE90, $475.20 per ton. AE90S at $544.80 per ton. And then they have CM grades. Those prices for that material is $722.85 per ton. Then for the vendor to provide a storage tank at the highway, a 10,000-gallon portable storage tank, the price for the RS2 and AE90 is $470.40 per ton, and AE90S at $540 per ton. That's from Asphalt Materials. Okay, the next, those were our bids for Asphalt Materials, liquid and the materials. Now we're going on to the Class 5 crushed stone. Martin Marietta is our first bidder. Once I find their number 11s. Their price for size 11 stone at the Cloverdale Quarry is $12.10 per ton. The price for 53s we got two different prices for 53s. You think 53C, is that crushed or what? 53s?
53 clean, probably.
Clean. The price for just regular 53s is $8.65 at the Cloverdale location. And the price for riprap is $12.10 at the Cloverdale plant. Those are the sizes we're going to read this morning. U.S. Aggregates at Cloverdale. Number 11 stone is $11.75. The price for number 53s is $6.40. Price for riprap is $9. Okay, our next bid is from Rogers Group Incorporated. We have two different sets of prices here. The first set that I will read to you is for their, at their Martinsville location. Number 11s is $12.75 per ton. 53s at $12.90 per ton. And riprap at $16.75 per ton. The next prices are for their location at Bloomington. Number 11s is $8.65 per ton. 53s at $9.15 per ton. Riprap at $13 per ton. Next bidder is Jones Crushed Stone. These prices are at their location. For number 11 is $9.50 per ton. And here we go. 53s is $6.75 per ton, and riprap is $9.50 per ton. This here, that concludes our bids for Class 5 on crushed stone. Now we're going to move on to Class 6 culverts. This is always interesting because there's usually 1,001 different prices in here. So Sport, what's your most common size of a culvert? Okay. If I can find that in here, we'll read that one. What gauge? Well, somebody else has to have this headache also. We got 16, 14, 12, and 10 gauge. Doesn't matter. What's that? Okay. So we'll go number 14 gauge, 12-inch culvert. The linear price for galvanized is $14.76. Sorry, Civil Con? Civil Con out of Jeffersonville, Indiana. So 14 gauge, 12-inch culvert. The galvanized price is $14.76 per linear foot, $15.49 per linear foot, and for polymer, $22.49. That's for a round culvert. And if we can find that same thing in this other bidder, we will do that. E-Bridge from Bedford, 14 gauge, 12-inch, galvanized is $10.82 per linear foot. Alternate number 2, no, what that is, $13.08 per linear foot, and polymer is $19.13. I believe that concludes our bids that we're going to read today.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Deb. We're just gonna go ahead and take these under advisement. Do you need a motion on that, Jim, for take them under advisement until next meeting? Thank you. Moving right on along, employee appointments. I'm not ready to do these yet. I've been working with Dan and Brian on these, some new commissioners coming in, but I know it's on the agenda, so I thought I would bring it up. But I'm not ready to make any of these right now myself. Moving right on down, managed IT service contract agreement with dispatch. I'm assuming Scott.
Good morning.
Good morning.
This is actually me and David together. Because our network is so intertwined, we've opted to, looked at a couple of managed IC service companies. There are actually 3, and we've settled on one, and we'd like to move ahead with a contract so we can get this in place by the first of the year when our other service contract expires. And it was with C2IT or C2IT. They're out of Plainfield. They seem to be a very good fit for our operations.
For years, we used another vendor that actually got bought out. So VIA was our original vendor clear back from 1987, I believe. And then they were recently purchased a couple years ago by another vendor and had a lot of staffing changes, and they're just not meeting our needs any longer. So I will say C2IT gave us basically the same exact deal that we had with VIA throughout the years. So there's no caps on time, there's no banks of time. That was one of our selling points, is a lot of the vendors wanted to go with banks of time, and I see that to be problematic on larger projects. So we're basically just changing vendors with the same circumstances we've had for many, many years. That the CEO is local to Morgan County, lives here in the Emnitz area, and their office is housed out of Plainfield.
Any questions for either Scott or David? Not, I'd entertain a motion on this. time on a motion to move on this for see to it. I do think it is a good move. Moving away, because I know VIA too, and I know it's, at times it was problematic, I know. Not hearing the motion, it's gonna die from a lack of a motion. It'll be on the next agenda, David. Scotty?
All right, thank you.
You wanna go ahead and move on to the locution right now, or?
Yeah, that'll be fine. Yes,
Thanks,
sir.
David.
Just basically, this is a change order for the locution project. As we're moving through this project, we've discovered some things that would make the project work a little bit better once it's in place. Gives us a little bit more redundancy. After talking with the company, talking with our radio vendors, this gives us a little bit more, like I said, redundancy is probably the biggest issue. That, you know, it gives us, in case we have one frequency goes down, then we can still keep operational on the other, because we do a simulcast system. This will kind of, even if the simulcast goes down, we can still stay operational. And there's sufficient money in the budget for this change order, and it's for $11,650. Just like to move along with that, so we could get it, equipment ordered and get it in place and keep moving along with this project.
Any questions for Scotty on this change order? Not hearing none, entertain a motion on this at this time. Not hearing one, Scotty, it's gonna be on the next month, or next meeting's agenda, sir.
Okay, that'll be fine, thank you.
Thank you. Moving right on along, Activate Health Clinic, the contract, it's actually a change order as well. Professional Service Amendment number 1, Dree.
The Morgan County Insurance Board met about a month ago, and this was brought to our attention that the Activate Clinic that we use for all of our employees that have insurance is going to be able to do rapid COVID testing, and you would know within 15 to 20 minutes of taking the test in your visit whether you would be able to, whether you would need to quarantine or all of that. They would also have the capabilities to do the lab testing. This is at a lower rate than we would pay if they went somewhere else, and it required an amendment to our contract. And the insurance board gave their approval.
Thank you, Dree. Any questions for Dree? I know we was both at the meeting. This is a good thing for the employees, especially with this COVID ramping up, so that's, I'm in full support of it, but I'd open it up for a motion.
No move.
Get a motion to go ahead and move forward with this managed professional service agreement between Morgan County and Activate Healthcare LLC on the amendment number 1. I'll second the motion. Any further questions from the board or from the audience? Not hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 2-0. Dree, you're up again, little lady.
I had a meeting a couple months ago and brought in all the department heads, and we looked at 3 different systems that would be able to meet our needs for an HR system. The council had given my approval for us to get an HR system in 2021, and so worked with this company. It is UKG. It was previously known as Kronos. Several people know that name. And it's also going to include a special scheduling portion for our dispatch, sheriff, jail, and for our EMS employees, which will really help them. And they were able to come in underneath the amount that was given to me during the budget hearings.
Any questions for Dree on this? I know it was in our pack and we've had time to go over it, but any questions for Dree? Not hearing none. I'd open it up for a motion.
No move.
We got a motion to enter into a contract for the HR with UKG in Morgan County, and I'll second the motion. Any other further questions from the board or from the audience? Not hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 2-0. We got several bids here, quotes here from Jason Maxwell on the mowing contracts for the different buildings. I know he's done a great job, and he's got them all presented for the EMS building here on East Morgan Street, for the one on 252, for the courthouse, for the Reporter Times, the annex, and this building as well, and all the adjacent lots. I'd go ahead and open this up for a motion. If anybody's ready to make a motion on these, he's the only one that's presented this year, but he's done a good job, and it is a service agreement. We'd love to keep him if possible, but
Motion to accept all the quotes.
we've got a motion on the floor to accept all quotes between Jason Lawn Care LLC and Morgan County, and I'll second the motion. Any further questions from the board or from the audience? Not hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries 2-0. Interlocal agreement between Morgan County and Madison Township. I don't see Donnie. Is Josh going to do it?
So, morning, everyone. This is an agreement that Commissioner Goodwin has been working with Madison Township. As you all know, I-69 is getting ready to shut down. We were worried about service to the northeastern part of our county, and we wanted to make sure that we would have good response there. So this would be a temporary interlocal throughout the duration of construction. There's a hard close date in there, or it could be terminated at any time with 30 days notice. There is a compensation of $48,000 annually for this service. If it's not staffed, then we would get that money back. It would be billed in 2 increments. But that is the agreement that's been drafted for us that both Madison and Commissioner Goodwin have said that they are good with. And so it's before the body today.
Thank you, Josh. Any questions for Josh? Jim, I'm assuming you've already had a chance to give it the one over and you're fine with it?
Yes.
Go ahead and entertain a motion on this interlocal mutual agreement for Morgan County and Madison Township to take care of not only Madison Township, but also EMS for Harrison Township as well during the duration of the construction I-69.
And I will add, it'll be on the council's agenda tonight for them to consider as well, since there's a financial component to it. And we tentatively have an effective date set for the 1st, because we expect the closure to happen on the 2nd. So we want to be ready to respond by then. But
So move.
You got a motion to approve this interlocal agreement between Morgan County and Madison. I'll second the motion. Any further questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 2-0. Thank you, Josh. Support letters for LPA projects. We have several that Tony got to us. The first one being Bridge, and it might not be in the exact order, but the first one being Bridge 49. That's over the Abraham Road and right out there off of State Road 44 and Bill Smith Road out there off of Bill Smith at North Prong, Scouts Creek. The second one being Bridge 29, is over Mahaleysville, over the New Trace Creek, southeast part of Morgan County. Next one is a complete road reconstruction realignment on Teeters Road. It's also from Centennial Road all the way to the new I-69. Next one is Bridge 97, which is actually over Yale Road out there in the western part of the northwest part of the county. The next one is Bridge 166, which is over Bluff Creek and Ode State Road 37 there at the bottom of the hill. And that's all we have. I'd entertain a motion on one or all, if there's no questions on these, Norman?
They're all together.
I believe 5.
Make a motion on Teeters Road, Bridge 29, Bridge 49, Bridge 97, and Bridge 166.
We got a motion on 4 of them, being Bridge 49, 97, 166. I'll second the motion. All those in favor of the LPA projects on them 4, signify by saying aye. Aye.
5 of them.
Here included in the one, oh, you did Teeter's Road. I am so sorry, Norman. He did include all 5.
When I said,
Yep, I am sorry. I'll still go ahead and second the motion on all 5 of them. All those in favor of the LPA project signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 2-0. Thank you, Josh and Deb, for getting them to us. We appreciate that. Personal handbook, this is going to be the first reading. I know we don't need a motion on this one, but we have been working with WIS to do this personnel handbook update, and it's a pretty major overhaul. So we will be bringing this up for a second reading later in the year, before year's end. So hopefully, might even have it passed before year's end if everything goes good. So. DLZ Space Need Assessment Study, is Eric here, or? Let's see.
You may want to go ahead and do your approval of minutes, so Eric can close out the agenda.
Well, we got claims to do.
We got
Oh,
claims
claims.
too, and I got a couple other little things. I'm gonna do the. Okay. Okay. Eric, while you're setting up, while you guys are setting up, I'm gonna go ahead and just do 2 little things real fast for you. EMA's annual assessment, Mark?
Let's do this too.
I apologize, it's an updated agenda and I didn't have it on there, so I apologize, Mark.
Tori's going to hand out it's a 2019 county assessment that the state does, and the
There.
2020 county assessment the state does, and also the 2019 and the 2020 quarterly and annual reports. Since I was appointed for the last 2 years, that's what we've done during that appointment time. We're supposed to meet at 74%. We're well over 100 on both assessments. And she sends that out every quarter, so. If you have any questions, you can call me or send me an email. The other thing I wanted to bring up, we're doing the Morgan County Food Drive Challenge again this year. Last year, we collected over 2,200 pounds, so I don't expect it to be any different. I just wanted to commend the employees of Morgan County government for all their generosity last year, and I would expect it to be no less this year. Tori and Davey. Norman, since this is your last meeting, we wanted to give you a plaque from myself, Davey, and Tori.
thank you.
Norman, I sincerely appreciate, and I know Davey and Tori does too, all your support during our tenure in EMA and your guidance and friendship. Certainly going to miss seeing you and all the help you provide. Thank you.
Thank you.
I got the claims, I'd entertain a motion on approval of the claims. Don't see any holds on any of them.
Motion on the payroll claims, including longevity, the county portion of PERF and the county portion of FICA, totaling $1,509,671.70.
Go ahead and second the motion. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 2-0. One last thing, Eric, before we move on. Had a really interesting letter that Scotty and Melissa forwarded to us, and can't thank them enough, but we got a dispatcher that kind of went above and beyond. I know it's normal operation protocol for them, but on December 1st, 7:21 a.m., Morgan County Dispatch received a call from a lady in labor. Medical assistance from Martinsville Fire Department, Morgan County EMS were immediately dispatched to respond to the call. But part of the dispatcher's protocol, Jody Neal remained on the line with the caller to offer pre-arrival medical instructions to render aid until the dispatch units could arrive. Using his emergency medical dispatching training, Neal was able to successfully talk the caller through the medical instructions, which resulted in the delivery of the baby boy just prior to the arrival of the first responders' medical units. Telecommunicators encounter a lot of difficult 911 calls during their careers, but this is a great example, one of the more positive experiences that can result from a 911 call. Stating 911 is, "What is your emergency?" Neal was presented a certification of recognition and struck pin by Dispatch Director Scott Hamilton and Deputy Director Melissa Franzman for his outstanding service. Just want to make sure, I know he's not here today, he's sick, but just wanted to make sure that we recognized him and the whole 911 staff for their service that they do. They do an outstanding job, as well as EMS, Sheriff's Department. We have a lot of great departments in this county that we're thankful for, but this one needs a big kudos for it's a boy. So just wanted to make sure we did that, Scott. Mr. Ratz, Ackerman, minutes. One more thing, Eric. Approval of the minutes for the November 16th meeting. Entertain a motion.
So moved.
I'll second the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries 2-0. It's all yours, gentlemen.
All right, good morning, everyone. I need to start off my presentation today, Acker from DLZ. I want to reminisce for just a moment. I want to go back 28 years ago. Standing in the basement, I was new to this profession, and there was a county councilman that kind of intimidated me a little bit at the moment. I think that we all know who we're talking about, but 28 years ago, I did a feasibility study on what was going to be this building. And I would just like to say that over the last 28 years, Commissioner Voiles, thank you for your friendship, professional, personal friendships. You have served our county very well, and I thank you very much for all the things that you've done for me personally, what you've done for DLZ, and also, most importantly, what you've done for all of our fellow citizens of our county. Thank you very much, Norman. Thank you. All right, so today, Eric Acker and I from DLZ, we're going to be presenting to you the space needs study and the life cycle analysis on this building as well as the courthouse, and then a little bit of work that we did on the courthouse annex on the east side of the square. Sorry for the mug shots. I'm sure you might appreciate that, David. I'm a principal architect, been at DLZ for over 20 years. Eric Acker is the same way, with a mechanical engineer. And then Robert Willey, electrical engineer. He's in some protocol right now, going through some issues that we all have experienced, but he also was looking at the electrical technology aspects of it, as well as Elliott Allen structural, and as well as others with that. But one of the things that we wanted to first and foremost talk about was the courthouse, this building, and then, like I said, the annex on the east side of the square. As we know, our courthouse first opened in 1857. It's one of the 6 or 7 oldest courthouses in the state of Indiana that's continuously been used and operated and maintained over the years. I think that every one of us that are citizens of the county and folks that have been through Martinsville, we're very proud of our courthouse, especially on the exterior of the building. You know, as old as the building is, over 160 years old, I think that from the exterior point of view, it's held its course of time very well. It's been added on to many times. I remember as a little kid, the big addition on the east half of the building in the 1970s. I remember that very well from that perspective. The other one's not quite so much. This building opened in 1996. This was a feasibility study. that was presented, whether to build an administrative annex, to build a judicial annex, various different locations in the building, and the decision was made to build the administration annex here on this site, the former county hospital site. The courthouse annex on the east side of the square, I remember it as the J.C. Penney building, is what most people do. The Toner building, it's got quite a bit of a history if you go back to 1915 when the Toner family, they renovated the building. It was an old opera house at one point in time, and they renovated the building, and it served as the Toner building for about a decade, became Penney's, and then it eventually evolved into being the courthouse annex across from that. Remember, as a little kid, my dad did quite a bit of renovation work inside the building, so I've got some memories back from the 70s from that perspective. So we're going to start off with that building first, the courthouse annex, and we were asked to look at some facade implications on that building. And I think that we all are very aware that it's a white terracotta on the exterior of the building. There's one project in Indiana that has just recently went under an extensive terracotta replacement project, and that's the old Coca-Cola Bottle Works factory that's on Mass Avenue, downtown Indianapolis. Something very, very similar in the situation that's been going on that project is the same as that's here. Is just quite honestly, over the years, the building has, and I'm not talking about since the county's owned the building, but we're talking decades, the building has not been maintained very well. There's been a lot of exterior water infiltration on the exterior that's gotten in behind the terracotta that has literally corroded a lot of the structural backup that's holding the terracotta on in place. There's shifting of the terracotta on the exterior of the building. There's some pretty severe cracks. DLZ's recommendation would be is that you get a lift, you get up and you start removing some of the terracotta pieces and fixing the structural components that are behind there holding the terracotta in place. I don't believe it. I do not believe that it's in an eminent domain type of situation where it's going to start collapsing. But I do believe that during the freeze-thaw cycle that we go through every year, that it's only going to get worse over time. And I think that there should be a plan developed immediately to get up there and to start to repair the terracotta. As you just look at the front of the building, there is a tremendous amount of cracks that's in there. It doesn't get better. It's one of those things that you do need to maintain. Otherwise, you're going to lose the entire front of the building. I know that there's a lot of things on social media about this was potentially a building designed by Louis Sullivan, one of the great American architects. I don't believe it was. Personally speaking, by any means, I know that there's a lot of characteristics of his designs, but this would, I just don't think that that was very apparent to what this building is. So space planning. Space planning involved a lot of meetings, involved a lot of different people in talking with in this building, as well as in the courthouse, as well as with Brian Foley at the courthouse annex building with that. You can start to see the folks that were involved in the interview meetings up here that's on the screen. And I want to thank each and every one of them. They took their time. They prepared spreadsheets, memos to me, excuse me, to help understand how each and every one of the individual spaces work. I would say that everyone took it very serious. I think that they were prepared. They came in, they had a lot of comments, a lot of positive comments about how to make things better. You know, I've done over 70 of these throughout the Midwest, and I think one of the things that's really interesting to me is that people, this is just not a complaining session. It is actually something where they sit down and they take their job very serious with this. They walk through, they give a lot of good recommendations on how they believe that their workspace, their work building, the site itself, how all of them can become a better project or a better workspace, not just for them, their staff, but also for the visitors into each and every one of those. So I want to say thank you to each and every one of those because they all were prepared, they all did help. Everyone showed up on time, we toured their spaces, and I think that overall it was a very good aspect with it. So I'm not going to necessarily go through and read every single one of these items because I captured notes from each one of the different aspects of the interview groups. But I think it's important to note just some of the highlights of some of the different ones which ultimately led to some of the solutions that we came up with. With the courts in the courthouse, I think one of the driving forces there was to try and to figure out a way to get the magistrate out of the basement, try to capture some of the storage that's in this building, move it back to the courthouse to be able to free up the storage in this building for some other opportunities. And I think that the other thing is just in, making sure that long-term that we have the security access points that work well at the courthouse, that we're going to be doing how we bring in custody inmates from the jail to the courthouse, how we're looking at that in a different perspective. I will note and just chime in a little bit with this slide and also the one with the sheriff and Dave Rogers, is that the other aspect that this courthouse, whenever we start to look at the courthouse security, best practices, of being able to separate the public from the staff, from the inmates, it's nearly impossible in this building. Back in 1857, they didn't worry about that the way that we have since post 9/11. But there's just some aspects with it that we're trying to improve, and we've looked at a couple of items that might be able to help that overall from that perspective. I think that if we were looking at a brand new facility sometime in the future, I think that the courthouse would be designed very differently. I think that one of the things that the judges would also would entertain would be potentially the addition of an additional court as a flexible court that would be used much more for senior judges in special cases, because that is something that they use, and it would be something that would probably make sense long-term with that. From a courthouse security standpoint of view, there is an organization, it's called the National Center for State Courts, that is a tremendous resource that helps with courthouse security, planning courthouses, looking at all the different ways to operate the facility. Excuse me. We have used them on several other projects as a great resource, and I think that it's something that you can always look at from that point of view to help out some things with that. From a court security point of view, I think one of the big aspects is just how we temporarily hold inmates and custody inmates when they're at the courthouse. It's a very limited area, and we need to be able to improve that. Obviously, currently, the only way that we have any holding is for one courtroom, and so there can be a lot of intermingling in the corridor space with inmates for that. County Administrator and Human Resources is being able to give them some dedicated space that they very much need, especially with Human Resources and some of the personnel type meetings they have. Obviously, they need some ability to have space, both of them, that is dedicated space where they're working side by side with each other, and obviously with a lot of other groups. Again, I'm not going to read all the comments, but just some of the pertinent ones on top. Auditor and the clerk, I think two very high visible groups within the county. I think that there's a lot of visitors that go in and out of each one of those areas. I think with the whole COVID-19, the last 39 weeks that we've all been dealing with this, is just continually looking at opportunities to improve how visitors to the buildings can work, would help on an overall basis with that. Overall, both of them, though, are in pretty good shape overall for their spaces along the lines. The assessor and the recorder, similar. Assessors, a little bit of an odd-shaped workspace, just kind of, they've absorbed spaces over the years, but I think overall that they seem to work pretty well. With the recorder, they've just got a tremendous amount of storage space that they need, and it's just being able to make sure that they can accommodate the COVID-19 issues that they deal with as visitors that they have coming in and out of the building. The treasurer and surveyor both seem to be overall doing fairly well. We all know that the treasurer has a huge amount of visitors to the building, at least twice a year. Just a little bit of an awkward space with a column in the room, but that's just the nature of that. There are some, what we call the universal compliance issues. Some will call ADA issues. We will call them universal compliance issues that could be improved a little bit. Surveyor, like Eric Acker is going to talk about here in a little bit, is just some concerns with HVAC issues, especially with humidity issues and all their documents that they have. Solid waste, soil and water, locations, it's in the basement of this building, a lower level. I think that the lower level of the building, as it started off as one large space and you've been able to capture it with multiple different agencies down there, that's been good over the years. I just think that, it is in the lower level. Some wayfinding signage to help folks to get to those areas was one thing that was mentioned over and over again for the folks in the lower level of the building. Planning and Health Department, it's always interesting to hear all the unique things that each one of the different departments and offices do in the county. And I think that just finding out some of the things that they do, some of the additional things that they do in each one of those areas was something that was rather interesting. With the health, I think that looking at, they do need some additional square footage in their space. They were pretty quick to note that when they came here, they got a lot less square footage than what they came from, even though the building they came from was probably not overly efficient. But in looking at being able to have some additional square footage, especially in the exam rooms, the waiting rooms, the acoustics with that, being able to improve that would go a long way. Purdue Extension, very near and dear to a lot of folks. There's a lot of space, a lot of people that they use. Just making sure that are they in the right building? Should they be in a different building? And I think you'll see some of our recommendations that we have coming up on this from this point of view. Veterans, the veterans down in the lower level, I wish that, they do have their space. They have limited number of visitors, but I wish that there was a way, and I think we'd all would appreciate being able to give them a little bit more dignity of what their space is, especially on a day like today. And I think that just in that space down there, they have some very dire needs, but they're working through it. But I think just a little bit more of a private, secure waiting area would go a long way, and probably a secondary room, a third room would help them tremendously. Substance abuse, I think that one of the things that they were looking at is maybe if they could have a shared conference room so they could do some small group activities would go a long way with them. But they do a lot of meetings, but most of them are off-site. So some of the things that we looked at in here, and this is for this building, is reorganizing just a couple of locations. But one of the items was to try and to create some additional square footage for the commissioner's area, as well as potentially creating some space for the council area such that they could have an administrative area before or after meetings, some type of a space for them. So on this, what you would see is, well, it doesn't look like there's a lot of difference, but what we were looking at is where the commissioner's room is currently. Although it's fantastic that it's next to the auditor, that it's right across the hall or the corridor from the Lucille Sadler room, our room that we're in here today. It's just to be able to meet all of the space needs, a workspace for each commissioner, as well as looking at something for the county administrator, HR, and making sure that Deb has the space and workspace that she needs. Looking back at a different type of space for where they would be located. That was originally set up to be a conference room from reviewing the drawings. So we would look at that as more of a meeting room. I would look at it as more as some COVID relief space. As a lot of the buildings are being shut down, instead of taking folks through the building to meet in the various different areas, maybe on a temporary basis, it could be helped out with the COVID relief space for that we're seeing in a lot of counties. On the upper level, this is where we start to look at some of the Space organization, we had actually talked about 2 or 3 things internally, which I will walk through those spaces, but where the extension area is, we were looking at relocating them, and likely out to the fairgrounds or to a different site, but not in this building. I think one of the things is expanding a little bit of an area for the health department is something that is necessary. As I mentioned earlier, they need more workspace, they need more lab space, they need more space for their exam rooms, for the waiting area for exam rooms. There's just very, very, very little acoustics in that area, and just some simple questions can be heard by a lot of folks. But moving the emergency preparedness into that area, and then taking the extension area and converting that into more of a commissioner and council area, as well as the 2 offices that are to the east, and converting those into the county administrator and potentially the human resources in that area. One of the things that would allow is that a lot of growth as far as space in that area. You know, I think that the space in there could be renovated fairly quickly, fairly easily, but also it would allow the appropriate amount of square footage in those areas to make that work. One of the other things that had been looked at, and several folks had made comments, is if we took the eastern third of this space on the upper level, if we were able to convert that into I will say, an upper level area, as you might see, the alternative new floor area, we looked at some options of, I know that you had just redone some windows, but to look at some options of maybe just a little bit better acoustics in the windows, to look at some floor space up there that could even overlook into this area, and potentially that also being part of the commissioner's area. That was another space that we looked at, and we looked at some cost estimates with that as well. I do need to note one thing on the first floor. In the upper right-hand corner, I know it's a little hard to read, but we were looking at that white space or the lighter color spaces either as a staff break area or to move the veterans into that area to get them up on the first floor. So I apologize for that point. And by doing that, we would move the data downstairs with all their head-in equipment, which makes a lot of sense for those folks, and they even recommended that as well. So now we move on to the courthouse, and we start to look at the lower level of the courthouse, and this is really where 28 years ago, Norman would lean up and look at me and during my study and ask me questions of where the council met. But for the magistrate area, looking at that as being more court storage, moving the storage out of this building, moving it all into the courthouse, so it's all self-sustained in that building. That could also free up some space in this building for some future opportunities. There's not a lot that's in the lower level in this building, so I think that it all would fit well into this building here. Also, and this may not be the final configuration, but I think the intention is to look at some multiple holding, group holding in the lower level for court holding, i.e. In custody inmates, such that you could hold them as a larger number, being able to separate those, also being able to provide the toilet fixtures that are necessary for these folks as they're into that space. On the first level, what we looked at, and we looked at several different options here, but what we felt the best option would be to be able to move the magistrate from the lower level, move them up into the courtroom that's on the west end of the first floor, which is the magistrate court, make that the magistrate court, and then to create a new Superior 2 courtroom where the prosecutor was. It's going to require a lot of work and to make all that happen, but we feel that with the Superior 2 courtroom there, it can be much more in the similar size as to what Judge Foley and Judge Hanson's courtrooms are directly above them, and we feel that that would be the best way to approach that. There are a few issues with the existing Superior Court 2 area. There's some exiting issues that would need to be addressed specifically if the the court stayed in its exact configuration with that. Also with the jury room size with that, it's jury rooms in all of the courtrooms are very, very, very small. And they all actually do need to be improved. One of the other things is that we heard on a reoccurring theme was to have a staff area within the courthouse, something that can be off to the side, but something that the staff could use. So we've identified that, and then we've also identified an area that the courthouse desperately needs is some conference room space for attorneys between courts, between sessions, in the corridors, when they need to meet with folks. A lot of decisions are made in the corridors of the courthouse, which is common, but sometimes we need to have some more quiet space, so we've identified some areas with that. One of the things I will note that we saw with the clerk, as well as we saw here, is that the clerk obviously oversees the election board. Putting the election board in the courthouse really doesn't make a lot of sense from a lot of logistics point of view. It would be fantastic if they were all in the same building, but the clerk needs to be at the courts, and the election board just works better if it's in this building than in the courthouse. So that was one that we did have to, working with Stephanie, that we agreed that would be separate. On the upper level, very similar configuration to what we have. One of the items that is always a concern is in Superior Court 3, with the courtroom being across the hall from the judges' chambers. There's a lot of congestion at the corner with the main stair of the courthouse, with the judge going back and forth. Pretty high volume court, and there's just some issues with that, and really being able to change that. Do you put the jury room next to the courtroom? Do you put the judge's chamber next? It's just very difficult to make that work, and that's been like that for many, many, many years, like that. And that all gets back to the best practices, and I think that's just where court security has to really help out whenever there is situations of moving the judge back and forth to the courtroom. So with that, that is more of a space planning point of view. Eric is going to talk more about the life cycle cost analysis, and what that really gets into is the conditions of the spaces, specifically with the engineering systems, whether it's the HVAC, the plumbing, the technology, the electrical aspects from that.
Well, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity here. I think I know everybody, but if you don't, I'm Eric Acker, a mechanical engineer with DLZ, Morgan County resident, and been around for a while too. So when we talk about systems in the buildings, you break it down into 3 priorities as to how vital it is that you replace it. Priority 1 is, as it says, is currently critical. Those are things you need to do right now, or you'll potentially damage the building further or address life safety hazards. Priority 2 are items that are going to fail pretty soon. You need to start thinking about them, but they're not critical yet, but they're going to be in the near future. And then priority 3 are items that we recommend. They don't have to be done, but it sure would be a good idea. Whoops. Yeah. So when we begin to talk mechanical system over in the courthouse, I don't think it's any secret that you've got issues over there. The system in the courthouse and the system in this building are the same type of system, so let me talk about that for just a second so you can understand what's going on. What you have is water source heat pumps, and those are basically units. There's 40 of them in each building, and they run off a water source system. You have boilers in the basement, you have a fluid cooler, you circulate the water in between, and then the water source heat pumps provide the final tempering and air distribution to the spaces. And as I say, you've got about 40 of them in each building. That leads to humidity issues throughout, because the way you introduce outside air leads to the humidity issues. We'll talk about that more in just a minute. In the courthouse, you've got poor circulation of the air. There's locations that need spot heating and cooling. The Equipment is dated. Most of the heat pumps over there date from the 95 renovation, although some were added in 2005, but which makes them 15 years old, and that's about all you're gonna get out of a heat pump. Those that are 25 years old from the original, or from the 95 renovation, you're on borrowed time with those. The plumbing system, I think most of it dates in the courthouse to the 97, or the 77 edition, which makes it 43 years old. And it's not in good shape. You got sewer odors over there, which indicates that your vent pipes may be cracked and leaking. That's where you get the odors from. You may have uncapped vent pipes. You've probably got traps that aren't sealed correctly. So the overall recommendation there is it's time to replace that. But when we talk about the humidity problems, they come from the outside air. When the building was renovated in 95, all but the only spaces that got outside air at that time were the courtroom spaces. All the administrative spaces, the corridors, none of them were provided with outside air. And that just leads to humidity issues because you're just simply recirculating the same air over and over and over again. You're not getting rid of anything. So in the 2005 project, they added some outside air to those spaces. And you know, they say the last plumber that worked on your house was a complete idiot. Well, the way they did the outside air at that point, I won't say it's an idiot because I know the guy that did it, and he's not an idiot, but there's much better ways to do it now. And if I were doing it differently, doing it again, we would do it a whole lot differently, a whole lot simpler than the way he did it. So there's room for improvement in that. From an electrical standpoint over there, it's all fluorescent lighting with manual lighting controls, so you're counting on people to turn the lights off as they leave. That's typically, I mean, if you're used to it, that's good, but typically we go with occupancy sensors. The code says you have to have either all red or all green exit lights, and you've got a mixture over there. So that's not good. That's a code violation. Poor Wi-Fi, there is none in the basement from what we understand. There's no sound system in the basement courtroom. The wiring over there is all Cat 3, 4, or 5, and for today's data transmission, you really need to upgrade to Cat 6. We typically recommend that you have a generator, a backup generator over there, and you don't. And the head-end equipment, we talked about that, Eric talked about that for just a little bit. To move the data center down to the basement, you'd completely replace that to make it more up-to-date, more up-to-speed, so that you have work-from-home possibilities. So when you break down the priorities, the Morgan County, over at the courthouse, the mechanical plumbing systems are well beyond their life expectancy. We need to replace the fire alarm system. There's kind of a laundry list of things that need to be done. And our estimate for probable construction costs for that is $1.9 million. Those are things that we think you need to take care of right now. Priority 2, security system upgrades, adding a generator. Do that for $200,000. And priority 3, again, these are the nice to haves, but as long as you're in the building doing things, we recommend that you do these items as well. And that's $2.5 million. So total for the courthouse would be $4.6 million, priority 1, 2, and 3. When you talk about the annex, this building, again, it's the same type of system. The outside air distribution is a mess over here. The way they bring it in here is just, it doesn't work. You're bringing outside air, fresh air in, and you're not cooling it at all. You're not wringing the moisture out. So it's basically spread throughout the spaces, and the water source heat pumps just are not made to wring out the kind of water you're bringing in. So we need to treat that at the source as it comes into the building rather than up in the spaces where it doesn't work as well. As a result, you have insufficient cooling. You've got humidity problems, especially in the basement. You put some spot dehumidifiers in place down there, and that works, except that's kind of a Band-Aid solution. That's really not a long-term fix. It's a Band-Aid. Down in the basement, originally there was no outside air distribution. I like the top left picture, because that was a solution to get outside air. They took a dryer vent, kind of wrapped it around and hooked it in there. It works, but that's really not a good idea. Most of the equipment is aging. The boilers are 25 years old. The water source heat pumps are 25 years old. They're on borrowed time as well. So basically, our recommendation is you need to start over. From an IT standpoint, it's fluorescent lighting with manual lighting controls. And you can see two different color exit signs, you know, that's neat for Christmas, but that doesn't meet the code. No Wi-Fi in the basement down here. If you're gonna move people down there permanently, you need to upgrade that. Again, the communication cabling needs to be Cat 6. And insufficient security. There's no card access to the building. So when you add all that up, priority 1 for this building, mechanical system, update the wireless, update the IT head-end equipment, it's $1.4 million. Priority 2, security system upgrades is $150,000. And priority 3 is the laundry list there, is $2.65 million with the alternate space that Eric talked about up behind us, another $650,000 on top of that. So total for this building would be $4.2 million plus $650 if you decide to add that space. So turn it back over.
So one thing to be clear is that on those priority 3s, those included at the courthouse to add the courtroom, to replace finishes throughout the building. It was a lot of things on there from that perspective to do that. And the priority 3 on this building was also looking at relocating the extension, included the cost of building new building for extension out at the fairgrounds. So that was an all-inclusive number from that perspective. So each one, $4 to $4.5 million, really improves both of your buildings from a systems point of view. I would say that, you know, it always reminds me of like the upper left-hand corner of your windshield in your car. When it says at 3,000 miles, you're supposed to get a oil change. Well, it's time to get an oil change for the building with respect to replacing the systems of the building. But each one of those options did include the space improvements as well as a new structure for the extension. So I just want to be very clear across the board from that perspective. So what that does is that is our feasibility study on what we believe needs to be done to the two buildings. I would say that the county has, especially with this building, I think that, you know, you've gotten 25 years out of this building. You have made improvements over the years. You have done things to prolong the life of the building, which has been good. It's just that, you know, it's the time, that corner of the windshield where it's time to make some improvements overall with that. With the courthouse, the one asterisk that I did have on there for priority 1 with about the best practices for courthouse security, that is a priority on the courthouse, but those costs were not included just because it's really, for the most part, a lot of it is not practical from that point of view. So the next steps of what we would look at is that we have presented a feasibility study with what we believe is best practices on how to sustain, restore, and maintain the facilities for the next generation, for the next 25 years, building on what has been done for the last 25 years. We think it is now appropriate for the council to work with financial advisors to look at how to potentially fund a project over the next few years for each one of the buildings. And then from that, as you develop your financial plan, then you're also developing what we would say generate an awareness and build a consensus within the community on why we believe that X amount of dollars need to be spent on each one of these facilities. You know, if you were looking at, and I think that somebody might always say, well, you know what, $8, $9 million seems like a lot of money. What would the cost of a new building be? Well, I think a cost of a new building would probably be more than double that amount. So I think that easily more than double that amount. So I think that, you know, we as DLZ is working with the county, working with a lot of officials, department holds, is that we've developed an acceptable solution that meets a lot of the long-term needs from that perspective. So with that, I'd like to open it up to any questions. I know Kenny left for a moment, but I'd just like to open it up to any questions or comments that anyone may have.
Eric?
Yes, sir.
So you had these two floors. I didn't see a proposal for the basement.
Yeah, we need to have a little better as-built conditions on the basement level. We can get that to you, though. I just need to spend a little bit more time. There was some discrepancies between what we had and what was there. Okay, good point. What we were asked to do was to look at the exterior facade only of that building. I will tell you that, Eric, if you'd like to expand on the courthouse annex HVAC system,
Mechanically, it's a bigger mess than what you've got in these other two buildings. It would be a complete, yeah, it'd be a complete gut and start over on that. Cost-wise, you're probably looking at between $300,000 and $400,000 just for the HVAC side. That looks about right, guess. Your mileage may vary.
it will fall, Brian. Eventually. To remove the terracotta, to improve the connections of how the terracotta works with the building itself, and basically start over. I think that would be, I understand. I think that would be to work with the downtown group to see if there's other alternative materials. That would be an option. You know, the terracotta is beautiful. I mean, it's in good condition, it's on the building. It's, you know, I think that people, they recognize that building because of the terracotta more than anything else. But I think that there are alternative materials that might be able to work as well. But it is something that needs to be repaired. Yes, Gary? Mm-hmm. And you're absolutely right, Gary. Building code-wise, it's not required. We just went through a project, a similar, for a renovation of a city hall project, where it is not required. But what we would recommend is that to look at it, you know, it's only $2 or $3 a square foot to do a sprinkler system in a building. It would be something that we would always recommend, but it is not required per a building code. Sure. That's correct. Pre-1978 sprinkler systems just were not typical in any buildings at all. Yes, Josh. So that's a very good question. One of the things that we would, before I could say yes or no, would be something where I would want to sit down with each one of the judges to look at really a scheduling of how their courtrooms are used. I will say that Eric and I have been involved in courthouses where we have moved the judges out. And when I say the judges, I'm talking about the courts, okay, in all due respect. We've also done it where we renovated half the building, half the judges stay in and half leave. There's pros and cons on both sides. But I think that one of the things we would want to first look at is what the availability, if there would be, to be able to maximize, say, two judges sharing a courtroom while another one is being renovated. That part has not been done.
Any other questions for Eric Ratz or Eric Acker, either one?
Yes, sir. So would you say similar size with a clerk at courts in the building? Would you include, others?
I would throw in there that I think you would almost have to include probationary, because I mean, they're
Sure.
really tight
Sure.
over there, you know that.
I would easily say that you'd spend in excess of $20 million. Yep.
Any other questions for either one of them? Eric, we greatly thank both of you gentlemen today, and I'm sure we're going to be getting back with you probably fairly soon. So,
Thank you.
got one last thing on the agenda that I overlooked. Tony Schiefert resigned from the Harrison Township Fire District Board for for a reason he stated is medical. I just wanted to bring that to the board's attention and see if we'd get a motion to accept that resignation. I don't think we're ready to do an appointment right now, but I think we ought to save that till we do the rest of the appointment, but that's just my 2 cents. So I'd entertain a motion on Tony Schiefert's resignation to accept it.
So moved.
We got a motion to accept Tony Seifert's resignation from the Harrison Township Fire District Board. I'll second the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 2-0. Entertain a motion for adjournment at this time. Motion, I'll second. Pass 2-0. We're going to take a 5-minute break before we do this solid waste meeting here at 11. Just mine only. No. One more signature.
You see that pile for Yeah, I've been through the pile.
IU? Well, we're gonna send them a billing statement, really, because this comes straight from you all, but I can send it too, so that's fine. Where we stand with it is, we have an unenforceable agreement that they said they would, and they obliged the first time, and so until they determine, no, we're not going to, and they did say they have similar arrangements throughout the state, and so I think in a reasonable amount, they were fine with that. If at some point,
Maybe two.
leadership, whatever changes, you never know, and there's.
They haven't decided on that one for sure. I talked about
Threatening to get
not
hostile.
having that one.
The key at this point.
And then the other one
from my
was
perspective, and I'll tell you why here in a moment.
7
I think
and-
you know why, but it is not an enforceable
21st.
agreement. It is an unenforceable gentleman's agreement.
Well-
Is it in black or white?
Yes, so, I guess, and I'd have to go back and look at it again, I'm sure I gave him a copy. So, unenforceable certainly to the extent that statute doesn't require them to pay a tax levy as others. And so that
with that in mind, other than the threat of withholding services, we, don't have anything to compel them to do that. And that was
That would be kind of
a little heavy-handed, right? So, but that was